Number one is 90% of podcasts are not going to be worth your time as a business owner because 90% are not producing episodes regularly.
Welcome. I'm so pumped to have my dear friend, Kim Spencer, joining me as a special guest today. I'm going to bring her right up on the stage and we're going to introduce her. Oh my gosh, Kim, welcome. Welcome to the show, to the live, to the time with all the people. We're focused on making our coaching business really work. By way of introduction, Kim and I are very familiar because we happen to be business besties. I'll never forget this statuesque, glittering gem of a woman strutting into the certified high performance coaching certification. I believe it was my first year, might have been a renewal. When she walked in with all her sparkle and hair down to her hips, I was like, who is this woman? And I really want to get to know her. Fast forward a few years, lived in different countries, had a bunch of babies, built a bunch of business. And over the last few years, Kim has really thrown herself into the podcasting space. There's a backstory to that. I'll let her tell you about it. Here's what you need to know. Kim is as real as they come. I know she's definitely is sparkles and glamour and everything. That is her authentic, amazing expression. She's even taught me how to curl my hair. This woman is the best. Okay. Kim, take 30 seconds and catch us up on why are we talking about podcasting?
I was stuck in Australia. We were those Americans who got stuck abroad during the pandemic. It was 2020 and my husband's industry completely shut down. It was entirely on me. We were living abroad with our 3-year-old. And I was like, I've had a digital business since 2018, not a problem. I can handle it. And then I was like, oh crap, my main source of lead generation literally just got COVID because I can't do live events. And that was when I remembered a $10,000 coaching contract that I had gotten from a podcast interview. I asked my team, do we need to double down? Let's try doubling down on podcast guesting. We'd had our own podcast for a year, and it was great for generating leads, but really it was for nurturing prospective clients who were in that in-between phase. They were interested, but they still want to learn more. And when we started guesting, that was when within 50 interviews, I generated over $70,000 of new business revenue. And then fast forward is now over $250,000 in new business revenue is a lot harder to generate the recurring business revenue. So I was like, I'm on to something. We ended up having a second child. And like any sane entrepreneur mother of two, I thought second child, obviously second business.
That makes so much sense because the urge to nest is like the urge to organize things. So if you were doing kind of some podcasty stuff on the side and it was like getting entangled with your coaching business, it makes perfect sense to me. It's just more organized.
It's like having two separate rooms for each of your two separate kids. You make each room their own. We had to separate the businesses because my message with Crown Yourself, which is really about mindset and leadership and communication strategies, well, Communication Queens touches on it. It's more Communication Queens is really about we're just going to get you booked on the right podcast that'll build your brand awareness and your bottom line. Like with Crown Yourself, my message was getting muddled. And my social media manager, when I told her we were going to break the two apart and separate the conjoined twins, she was like, thank you, because clearly two separate brands. And I was just on the Brad Weissman show and he was like, your book cover looks so different than like your Crown Yourself brand. And I said, yes. And that's the point because Crown Yourself, it's got a very regal feel. I will definitely call you out, but it's more about calling your mindset out, calling your decision strategies out. On communication, one of our queens, our value is out loud and proud. And I once had a prospective client come to me who was a very buttoned up businessman. He was very, very well known in his industry as a speaker. And he was like, are you going to make me pay? And I said, no, that's my brand. Our job is to honor your brand. If you want to have your button down Brooks Brothers suit, we will honor that. We will give you the nice basic navies and blacks and slight tints of red in your one sheet and make sure that your brand reflects accurately who you are,
Oh my
not
gosh.
who we are.
I love this. As I was getting ready for this podcast, I went, oh my God, I need to have a shower. What that has to do with the branding thing is that I literally had the thought, I really am the get up and do it coach. Like my hair is literally wet, you guys. And I think that for a long time, I was really trying to figure out who I was and who I wanted to express as a coach. And so just this morning with the whole branding piece of things, it's the red lips and the red glasses made it. The hair didn't, but never let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And I think showing up fully and authentically as who you are is absolutely essential to success as a coach. And I think one of the reasons I was very excited to have you here on the show is because you're very successful as a coach. Most of my audience are aspiring coaches or they have gotten started, but are drowning in. I think it's exciting what you've learned and what you're doing with your podcast agency. And also, you've applied so many of those things for your own coaching business. Can you walk us through some of your top 5 do's and don'ts of using podcasting as a coach? I know I've had some icky experiences around podcasts. We later talked about it and you were like, that should never have happened. I would love to hear your 2 cents on if I'm a bodacious, amazing coach who has a desire to have all this impact and some income too. What should I keep in mind when it comes to podcasting and podcast guesting?
Number one is 90% of podcasts are not going to be worth your time as a business owner because 90% are not producing episodes regularly. Sometimes I know you, as well as I, have eliminated the 15-minute coffee chats from our coaching business because we've been in the game for almost a decade and there's no need for brain picking. Podcast guesting can sometimes be hidden by the veil of being a pick your brain session where the episode is never distributed. And
Yuck.
that's one thing you want to look out for as a coach and as a business owner is making sure, has this podcast distributed an episode in the past 90 days? It's like bare minimum. And we have a 5/30/90 rule. I share about it in the book. And this is make sure the podcast has 5 reviews because reviews, if you look at typical marketing conversion ratios, that's the amount that you only get like 1 to 10% to actually take that action on clicking through. You may get 20 to 40% opens on your email, but that's like your podcast downloads. You tell somebody to write a review, that's that extra like 1 to 3% click through rate. And so we've found that even though podcasts are a little shy of sharing their numbers, like their download numbers, if you multiply the number of reviews they have by 10, that's about the amount of downloads they're getting per episode. And so 50 downloads, 30 to 50 downloads per episode, that's a good size workshop that you are hosting coinciding with a podcaster, especially if they're aligned with your business, your avatar, your story, and your brand. At least 5 reviews, at least 30 episodes, because that automatically puts them in the top 9% of podcasts. 90% of podcasts don't make it past 10 episodes. And 90% of podcasts also don't produce every 90 days.
I'm doing like a little fist pump in the air because I'm like, yes, I'm in the top 10% just because I've been doing this for a minute. And so I love this. The distinction, goodness, there's so many things I want to unpack in what you just said. Talk to us a little bit about the distinction between hosting a podcast, because to fight for that top 10%, that may or may not be a battle that a coach wants to take
Mhm.
on. I think that I had ignorance on fire about a lot of marketing, and I've done so much of it for 5+ years for each of these strategies that it's, do we really want to stop or do we just want to optimize and get better? So that's where I'm at with hosting a podcast. But let's fast forward. It's 2024 right now. Should a coach start a podcast? Should they stick to guesting? What's your opinion there?
It depends on where you are in your business, right? So if you are in a relationship when it's on the rocks, when you are struggling with communication, when you are having those difficult, it's not quite working, the last thing you want to have is a baby together. And that's your relationship with your business. So if your business relationship is on the rocks and you're not quite bringing in sales and your cash flow is struggling, starting a podcast is like having a business baby project that you're going to be working on. You don't need another project. You need a process to get new leads and traffic. Guesting is what I normally recommend for those starting out so that you also get your feet wet with your message. My first guesting spot was in 2016. I was still marketing. I was barely marketing my coaching business. I just come out with a co-author bestseller called The Start. I still had my brick and mortar Pilates studio back then. I didn't quite know what my message was. The great thing about podcast guesting, especially like this wasn't for a podcast that had a small audience. It's actually for one that's like a top 1% podcast now. It's blown up, but they've been in the game for 9 years. But I was one of their earlier episodes. I still was figuring out my message. And back then I was talking about alignment with your body and really being able to have body love and wellness. I wasn't sure on what I was coaching yet. I wasn't yet a high performance coach. I didn't have that clarity. So podcast guesting actually allowed me to have that clarity on what messages were resonating. I would have direct feedback from the podcaster, which was really helpful. Hosting can be a wonderful way to attract mentors. Just don't have it be a pick your brain session. Hosting can be a wonderful way to attract mentors because I can ask to pick somebody's brain and maybe they might give me 5 minutes. But if I invite them onto my podcast with an audience of 100,000 downloads, like they're going to be much more inclined to share their message, their tips, their tricks, their best practices with me simply because I have an audience and I'm providing a value for them. It can also be great as a coach, as a strategy that you build into your business, so long as you don't make it awkward. Like you can have your podcast be a lead generation strategy if you don't treat the podcast interview like your main source of lead generation strategy. When you invite a guest on, you're not immediately them into your coaching program, or worse, using manipulative tactics like, oh, I just heard this and this and this in your interview. I think you could really benefit from my
I've had
relationship
it
chat. Or
happen. That is, you're
it's
preparing
so,
it for the purpose, for one stated purpose, and then they just immediately flip it into a sales convo. I would never hire a coach who has a podcast. It's more, there's a way to have that conversation, and that's not the way to do it.
yeah. And I've had like my last coach I hired because I was on their podcast. Their process was so streamlined and intuitive, and they asked really insightful questions. I pay coaches for perspective shifts.
Mm.
That's the key when you work with coaches. You want growth and expansion. When I started getting perspective shifts on the interview, they invited me. They're like, "Would you like to have a follow up conversation?" I was like, "Yeah, you know what, I would." And they're like, "No pressure, no hard sales, I promise." And I said, "Okay, cool." And then I went on the follow up conversation. No pressure, no hard sales. It was just, okay, this is where you're going through, where you want to get to, and here's our process. And let's see if this is the right fit for both of us. It wasn't this, I need sales. And I think that's where most coaches get it wrong when they approach a podcast from that energy of neediness and I need sales. And they turn it into like this sales conversation before the person's ready. And I always think of podcasting, whether you're guesting or hosting, like dating. It's a first
Yes.
date.
Yes. Yeah,
Like,
exactly. It's, hey, we just had coffee, man. I'm not sure if we're ready to get married, like,
yeah,
or move in,
It's sometimes there may be that person. I was that way with my husband. It was very fast, but it was all right versus someone trying to have it be fast for the sake of they just wanted to get married, right? So
Yeah.
it's the same way with sales. If you make it needing it, it's a gross energy. So I always say approach any podcast interview, whether you're hosting or guesting, like a demonstration. Let it be the best demonstration of who you are, of your services, of your brand, of your business, of what you stand for. Let your work speak for itself. A great way to do this is by embedding testimonials and client metaphors into your interview to share how it works for others.
I really love that tip, especially about weaving in examples. I've been teaching marketing for like 6
Long
years,
time.
long time. I think one of the things I notice on social media and in podcasts is this rigidity that people can bring. I'm not saying you got to show up with wet hair, right? Like, you can blow dry your hair. What I'm saying though is that my favorite podcast that I listen to, and I'm thinking about like these world-class podcasts like Modern Wisdom, etc. I've been binge listening to that one.
One.
It's so good. What makes it so good is it is a relaxed conversational vibe, and they are talking about really relevant topics for the audience, but it does come across a bit like coffee, like a very sophisticated
Mhm.
coffee. Do you have any other tips for helping a coach loosen up but still have a tight message?
So, like, just breathe.
Thing.
I know. But my first business was at 19 years old teaching Pilates. And one of the things that I learned from that business and teaching it for 13 years was the fact that most people are breathing from the top one third of their lungs. So they're super stressed and their breathing stays in their shoulders, which means you're not actually getting your breath into your body.
Mm.
If we're going to go metaphorical, you're not actually getting your breath into your heart or into your gut. And like those areas when you speak from the heart, right? How? Like breath can bring that through because there's a level of resonance that happens when it's resonating inside the body. Take a few deep breaths. I had a client in entertainment industry for my coaching business, very high level client. And I gave him the exercise of just simple 90 seconds of parasympathetic breathing, meaning you inhale and then exhale longer than you inhale. So you inhale for a count, exhale for a count of 8. And just 90 seconds puts you into a parasympathetic state with your nervous system. So you're calm. Because when you're thinking about need, how am I going to leverage this? When you're thinking about all those things and all the tactics, you're stuck in your head. Every professional athlete knows when you're in your head, you're dead. You want to be in the space of being in your body and trusting that body and that message. So breath is one. And then the second one is when you are in that space of focusing on your message, on how you come across, if people are going to buy from your business, those fears are all about you. They're all about your own
So good.
ego.
So good. Such good reminders. I love it. What's the third one?
Be of service. Shift it from ego, which is selfish, to being of service.
I lost your audio on the Instagram.
You lost my, okay, try again.
You're good.
There I am.
That's how we start is how we continue, isn't it?
So being of service, and what I mean by being of service is taking it to that. One of the questions that I tell all that's in my book, Make Every Podcast Want You, I tell all of my clients to ask before every interview. Just ask the host, who is your audience?
Oh, that's
Where are they
so
in their life
good.
and business?
Yes.
Because I know if I'm speaking about leadership principles, if I'm talking to an audience of high level CEOs who have 50 employees plus, that's going to be very different advice than I give to the solopreneur who's just starting their business. That's going to be very different strategies, tactics, stories, even because they won't resonate with the stories at those higher levels. They'll think, oh, it's nice to be there, but that's not where I'm at. That's not where my pain problem is. So be of service to the current audience's pain. And the greatest way to ask that is to understand where the host is. Where are you at with your business? And it's not to ask to sell them anything. It's to have them understand how to serve their audience and to serve the host because the host is the number one listener and the greatest reflection of who their audience is.
Yeah, and they also have the editing scissors too.
To
They're going to be looking for certain things. I really love this. Now, we are here live and we've got several people watching. If anybody has a question for Kim, make sure you're on Instagram and go to the question bubble in the bottom of the live feed and you can ask anything. If you're brave and you'd like to come up onto camera, you could even do a little laser coaching for a minute or two. Go ahead and post those questions. Anything about
yeah,
podcasting, building a coaching business, you name it. All right, so let's keep going on this idea. Kim, thank you so much for the advanced copy of your
you're
book.
welcome.
My feedback to her was that it is a masterclass in marketing with the angle of using podcasts. You talk in the book about being a great host. You mainly focus on guesting, and you
Mhm.
mentioned that is particularly good. One of the things I really loved from this interview was when you said you need a process, not a project. Can you unpack for us? Let's say we committed to the podcast guesting strategy. We're looking for stages. Obviously, get her book. It's coming out on September 30th with all the details. But if you were to give us a very high level, what is that process that we don't just do this as a one off project and then may or may not be disappointed with the result?
So I know that you and I are like process queens and we love a good process. And I outlined this in the book as far as what the process looked. I come from Hollywood and that was my dream. And that's why I started my first business as a Pilates instructor to support myself in that dream. And when I got that dream produced and distributed and Lions picked it up and everything, that was the moment where I was like, oh my gosh, there's got to be more. But I took that same process and I applied it to my business. And what that process is when you're in Hollywood and you have a movie, right? You have an in development stage where you're developing the relationships, you're developing who's going to be a part of the project. Then you have pre production where you're planning. Then you have production where you're recording, you're doing the thing. Then you have post production and then distribution. That's the whole arc of the podcasting process, whether you're hosting or guesting. If
Interesting.
you're guesting, in development, you're developing relationships. We don't use our project management dashboard for this. We just use a spreadsheet to track all the podcasts that we're submitting. either me to or our clients to. And then we are able to track where they are in the development phase of building that relationship. Once we get them into scheduling, that's the pre production phase. We're figuring out time zones, booking. Some podcasts will want an advertising sponsorship. Sometimes podcasts will want you to fly there and do a live interview. Then you have the recording, which is the production phase. And then you have post production. Fortunately, if you're a guest, there's not much that you have to do except promote the episode. Like most people get stuck, and I've seen this specifically with coaches. They think, oh, I'm not making any money because the episode hasn't distributed. I haven't generated any leads. I haven't generated any referrals because the podcast episode hasn't distributed yet. We have for every single one of our or for every single one of our agency clients, we have an Airbnb Uber style review system. We track our clients getting business, generating business before the podcast interview even distributes. And we track, are they getting referrals? Are they getting clients? Was any further business discussed? Being able to track that, suddenly you're able to see, okay, yeah, there's referrals. How are you up leveling that relationship?
I
It's
think
all
that's
about
the
the
key.
relationship.
It's totally the key, right? For the I just recently started inviting guests onto my podcast more proactively
I
with success instead of treating it like a project. The first thing I did was set up a pipeline system in my customer relationship management data. And, I segment out my podcast guests. It's a very similar approach to
Mhm.
it because as far as I'm concerned, it is a relationship. Are we building a relationship here? And how can we both service that relationship, bring service
Yeah.
to that relationship, right?
And a few quick tips to do this that not only position you as the go giver or as a person who's bringing generosity and reciprocity to a relationship and who isn't just a taker is as soon as you get off the podcast interview, take a screenshot, showcase that on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, your platform of choice, and be like, hey, I was just on this podcast, because that automatically positions everyone else in your audience of going, oh, she's an authority. Oh, she's going on podcasts. And other podcasters may be in the audience. They may say, oh, I didn't know you did interviews. I would love to have you on. So start showcasing it. Drop the podcaster a LinkedIn review or testimonial and say, hey, thanks. Here, I wanted to give you this testimonial. You did such a great job interviewing. Because you never know. Podcasters, sometimes they want to be MCs at events. They want more speaking gigs as well. Everybody has their own dreams that they're going after. Be the person who enhances that relationship and gives generously. And then tag them multiple times. Like between the time that your episode is recorded and the episode is distributed, sometimes can be months. So keep the podcaster on a list of your social media favorites that you visit once or twice a week and just interact with them on their own social content. If somebody's like, oh, I'm really interested in this. Yeah, I was honored to be a guest on it. Drop them a review. These are all little ways that just let the other person know that you're thinking about them, that you care. Like
So
podcasters
good.
put so much hard work into producing an episode. The problem I see with most guests and the big harp that I get from most podcasters is they don't hear anything from the podcast guest after they go on their show. I was talking to one podcaster and she was like, yeah, I had someone actually say in the application that they would not promote the episode. And I was like, they're obviously rejected.
I have that question too, like just double checking. And I don't care if you have an email list of two people at this stage,
Yeah.
right? And different podcasters are going to have different thresholds for how much they care. But I think that a good standard, a good minimum standard is you're going to make a post on that social media. If you have an email list, you're going to push at least one email out talking about that experience and really aiming to add value. Okay, we've got two questions that have come in. Angela, you said you were willing to come on live. If you could smash the little camera with the plus sign at the bottom, then you can request to join and we can address your question live. The other question was, I have a question for Kimmy. How can I focus on my work when I'm feeling sad or I'm having relationships problems that's just taking up all the brain space? And I love this question because I think sometimes, especially when we're building a business, we build this huge wanna do list. It's not a to do list, it's a wanna do list. And that wanna do list is like this drowning in things I should do, things I could do, and you're just choking on it. So,
Mm.
what's your top advice for somebody who is not feeling like they're accessing the brain space necessary to really push their business goals forward, including podcast guesting?
So, on the one hand, the beautiful thing with podcast guesting is you can have your boundaries around what you will talk about and what you won't talk about. And I highly recommend that if there's anything that you're dealing with personally, that's not necessary. That save that for a therapist's office, relationship coach, like get the support that you need in that area. And you can be guided to answer the podcaster's questions, and sometimes those prompts can allow you to think about your business in a new way. So
Mhm.
it's not and that can be a really big blessing. On the flip side, back in 2021, and Amanda knows this, because she was with me throughout the whole ordeal, I lost 3 family members, had a baby, scaled my business 150%, and one of those family members included my dad. And so it was an intense emotional year. And I share about this experience in the book because I made a very clear and specific rule that after a death, a marriage, a move, a giving birth to a child, like some major upheaval, life of a divorce, just put podcast guesting on the back burner for 3 weeks. They will be there in 3 weeks. You can always say, "Hey, I'm dealing with some personal challenges right now. I'd love to circle back with this in 2 months or in a month to 2 months." They'll be there. They'll still be there. If they're a quality podcaster, they will still keep going. And if they really enjoy your content and want to have you on and want to have your advice and want to have your message shared with their audience, they value you.
Mhm.
So they'll be there. Allow yourself to take this time and space to do what you need to do to also heal. I also am of the so that it's if there's a duality in my answer, and I completely understand and hear the paradox. Because on the one hand, you can use podcast guesting to help give you a little bit more clarity as to the brand while focusing the relationship challenges on one side. But on the other hand, if they really are serious relationship challenges, sometimes I completely understand how that may take a priority at in your life at this moment, and that's okay too.
That's so good. Spoken like a great coach. I love it. Thinking about connecting, what's the best way for people to follow you? Do you have anything for our audience? Take it away.
Yeah, if you love this episode and you would like the masterclass that I taught for Amanda's mastermind on how to get coaching clients from podcast interviews, then hit me up in the DMs. Just say coaching in the DMs on Instagram at Kimberly.Spencer, and I will send you that masterclass for free.
Oh my God, that is so awesome. Thank you so much. And everybody, follow Kim. She's an absolute gem. She's just as consistent as they come. I really just appreciate you. I love you, friend. Thank you for being here. And see you all next week on the Monday. And keep crushing it. Keep doing matters. We'll see you soon.